Good Monday morning. It is July 28th. You found us here on the weather desk. I'm meteorologist Craig Moeller, and I'm broadcasting from Norfolk, Virginia, serving southeast Virginia and northeast North Carolina. That includes all of Hampton Roads, the eastern shore, down at the Outer Banks. If you're tuning in from across the country, you might wonder where exactly Hampton Roads is. It's southeast Virginia and then down into North Carolina. You take a look here at the weather desk. It is today's top weather headlines. We do this every Monday through Friday, and we do that starting at 9 o'clock weekday morning. So we're glad you found us. All right, so what are we tackling today? What are some of the top weather headlines? Well, we've got an extreme weekend heat wrap up. I'm telling you what, we had all kinds of weather and some dangerous, in fact, deadly conditions for some parts of the country. A couple heat-related fatalities we'll get into here. That's one of the big stories today, and the heat continues today. That extreme weekend heat that we saw, it continues for parts of the country. In addition to that, we've got to discuss some of the hot weather impacts, not only to our physical selves, we talk about that a lot, but it's been so rough with all the heat across the area that it's starting to impact other things like travel. Right now, Amtrak reporting some potential delays due to the excessive heat. We're going to talk about that. And then we're going to look ahead to our severe weather outlook for later today. There's a level 4 threat. Think about that. That's a moderate threat of severe storms across parts of the north central U.S. I'll show you that, talk about what the primary concerns are as we go through the day. And then after that, we're going to talk about something that sometimes occurs with some of these massive thunderstorms. We get some cold pools, really cold air that gets pulled down. We'll talk about how they form and what they can do in terms of spawning new storms and how that can lead to other issues like flash flooding. So real interesting talk about thunderstorms, how they develop, how they collapse, and how they can actually create new rounds of thunderstorms. And we also have an update on the tropics. So far, things have been relatively quiet in the Atlantic basin, but we've got Iona spinning south of Hawaii. We'll talk about some other areas that could see some more development, all of that coming up. So that's a look at our headlines. Let's start with the temperatures from across the country yesterday. And you see this map shaded with all the orange and some of the darker reds. You know it was a hot day. I mean, come on, this was the end of July, July 27th here. So you take a look at these temperatures, and we've had some extreme heat. There were heat-related real big issues back across the central U.S. from Omaha to St. Louis through Little Rock. We've got an update for you from Dallas, and we're going to take a look at Phoenix, 110 degrees. So dangerous heat, and unfortunately that situation turned deadly. The extreme heat was too much for some hikers over the weekend in Phoenix, and in Dallas County, officials are reporting their first heat-related death of the year. Now, according to the Dallas County Health and Human Services, the victim was a man in his 60s with unknown pre-existing medical conditions. And similar dangerous temperatures are set to affect about half the country over the next few days. Meanwhile, more heavy rain on the way today, and plenty of it for some parts of the nation. Here's ABC's Andrew Dimbert with the latest.
Dangerously high heat is fueling extreme weather across the country. This tornado touching down near Watertown, South Dakota. The severe storms contributing to more than 1,200 flight cancellations and nearly 9,000 delays nationwide. And now, more than 170 million Americans from the plains to the East Coast are bracing for life-threatening temperatures.
We're trying to stay by the pool, stay by the water if we can.
As more people head to the beach to beat the heat, concerns about safety at national parks. An 18-year-old in Maryland drowned at Assateague Island National Seashore, which is managed by the National Park Service. Officials say lifeguards rushed to help two swimmers about 150 yards outside the guarded zone of the beach, the teen later dying at the hospital. It comes just weeks after Maryland's U.S. senators urged the Trump administration to fill lifeguard roles they say were left vacant by federal budget cuts. The senators writing, "Lives are at risk." About 1,000 National Park Service employees were fired by the Trump administration in February. As for that heat, feel-like temperatures could reach nearly 115 in some places this week. Officials warning people to stay hydrated after several hikers in Phoenix had to be rescued from a local hiking trail.
They really underestimated what that challenge can be on that mountain. They did have water. They ran out of water. They didn't have enough water.
Andrew Dimbert, ABC News, New York.
Obviously, very serious heat across the country. Look at this. I mean, from Norfolk, right here where we reached a high of 94, through Louisville, down through Atlanta, Orlando, sweltering at 97, and all the way out through Vegas. A lot of heat gripping so much of the country. Well, what about today? You take a look. We have more heat alerts across the country. There are extreme heat warnings for Nebraska, parts of southeast South Dakota. You get into southern Iowa and western Iowa. Then again, from St. Louis on south along the Mississippi River Valley, so much heat and humidity. We've got more extreme heat for much of North Carolina and South Carolina. We also have some of that around Huntington, West Virginia. As we take a closer look, we can zoom in here, show you some of the communities. Raleigh under that heat warning, and we'll zoom in to show you Hampton Roads under heat advisory today for just about the entire 13 News Now viewing area. The Eastern Shore is not under the advisory. They're the only part of the entire region that is not under the advisory. You go down to the southwest of our viewing area, Roanoke Rapids to Rocky Mount, back towards Raleigh, as I just mentioned. They are under extreme heat warning, and we've got more heat in the coming days. Temperatures topping out low 90s today, low 90s tomorrow, 94 on Wednesday. We're going to stay hot on Thursday and then start to cool it down heading into the weekend here around Hampton Roads. It's the humidity combined with these air temperatures that are going to produce feels-like temperatures. We're going to see temps up feeling like 100 to 105 today, probably upper 90s to near 102 or so tomorrow, and it stays really hot Wednesday into Thursday. And with more hot days in the forecast this week here in Hampton Roads, health experts warn during these hot summer months, heat-related illnesses are a huge concern. Layla Cox has the latest with an expert and their tips on how you can beat the heat.
Hampton Roads has another hot week ahead, with some days reaching feels-like temperatures in the triple digits. In a new study, the Virginia Department of Health found in 2024, extreme heat was the leading cause of weather-related deaths. So VDH is sharing safety tips to prepare and avoid heat-related sicknesses. While the summer season is known for its hot days and soaking up the sunshine, experts say extreme heat can make you very sick. According to the Virginia Department of Health, so far this year, between May 1st and July 24th, there were 2,883 heat-related illness visits to emergency departments and urgent cares in Virginia. As of July 25th, across the Commonwealth, there has been one heat-related death. Experts warn that heat stroke and heat exhaustion happen when the body is unable to cool itself. To help your body stay cool, VDH recommends drinking plenty of water, limiting physical activity to early morning or evening times, wear sunscreen, never leave children or pets inside a vehicle, and stay inside for a break from the heat. VDH officials say age, weight, heart disease, alcohol, sunburn, and prescription drugs can impact how quickly your body cools down. Experts also encourage people to check in on others, particularly for signs and symptoms of heat stroke and heat exhaustion, like confusion, very high body temperatures, profuse sweating, nausea, and irritability. Layla Cox, 13 News Now.
Hi, Layla, thank you for that update. And, a lot of it seems like common sense. I know we are well into summer, but if you drop your guard and maybe you go without staying hydrated, or, you don't think about checking on the neighbors, they could be in trouble. And just take that extra moment to think about doing that. And one other personal plea to you, make sure you remember your four-legged friends. Make sure they've got plenty of fresh, cool water. Give them breaks from the heat. If you're suffering in the heat, humidity, they are as well, oftentimes, and they can't always express it. So just think about that as well. All right, we're going to take a look at one other element that you may not always think about with heat, but hot weather can also impact travel through some of these hot areas. And we're talking about railway travel. Amtrak put out a statement ahead of this summer heat. According to their website, extreme heat can cause rail, bridge, and overhead wires to expand. As a precautionary approach, Amtrak may operate trains at lower speeds, and that can result in possible delays. Amtrak's response plan includes prioritizing passengers with special needs and providing water. If you have a trip planned, you can receive updates on your train ride through text, email, and the Amtrak mobile app. think about it, these are things that, we deal with during the hottest months of the summer, and we've certainly had our share of extreme heat. All right, we're going to turn our attention from extreme heat to other forms of extreme weather and severe weather. Specifically, this is the loop from over the weekend. You saw those storms that came through here late last evening. A lot of storminess, some clusters of it breaking across parts of the country. I want to focus on the severe weather outlook for today, and we'll zoom into this part of the country. This is the north central U.S. You see from just out west of Green Bay across central Wisconsin. You get into western Wisconsin and around Minneapolis, St. Paul. And here you have a slight risk, a level 2. You keep going west of that, southern Minnesota, parts of northern Iowa, under a level 3 or enhanced risk. And then you get to this level 4, a moderate threat. And when you get to level 4, we expect widespread severe thunderstorms. There'll be numerous warnings later today. A lot of powerful storms capable of doing some damage. Now, that slight risk, the level 2, reaches all the way back through Billings, Montana, and Great Falls. So the western areas extend out with level 2. But it's this area here, levels 3 and 4, that we're most concerned with. So what are the specific concerns with this setup? Well, first of all, you have the potential for large hail. And that hail could extend all the way back through Montana up into into North Dakota, southern parts of North Dakota, around Bismarck here, across most of South Dakota and much of southern Minnesota. Potential for larger hail. Now, we'll see what develops with these things. We always need to watch. But of greater concern than this is going to be the likelihood of damaging winds. And these winds in excess of 75 miles per hour from central parts of South Dakota all the way across southern Minnesota and down into northern Iowa. And this is where you really get into that elevated risk for powerful storms capable of producing very destructive winds. So doesn't need to be a tornado to produce damaging wind gusts. We see that a lot with straight line winds outflow from these heavier storms. And in fact, we're going to get into how storms can produce some of these gustier winds when we talk about cold pools coming up. But for right now, I want you to see this area here, again, identified with that greatest threat for strong winds. So south of Bismarck, out towards Minneapolis, north of Omaha, and out through Rapid City, this is an area really under the gun. In addition, there is an elevated risk for tornadoes as well. So as we switch over, you'll notice Aberdeen, one of the cities there in South Dakota that could deal with an elevated threat for tornadoes. So you have that risk, which is very high for powerful outflow straight line winds, but you could also get some rotation as well. Tornadoes certainly a possibility in this same part of the country. Now, some of the other communities under this elevated tornado risk: Huron, Watertown, Marshall, and over towards Wilmar. Again, an elevated risk for tornadoes across the north central U.S. That all coming up later today. Now, for tomorrow, you can see the risk is not as great. Today, we have that level 4 threat. Tomorrow, right now, the Storm Prediction Center is saying, okay, the atmosphere will reset a little bit. It won't be quite as volatile. And we have a level 1 threat from Chicago and Milwaukee all the way across all of Iowa, all of Nebraska, southern South Dakota into Wyoming and Montana, even northeast parts of Colorado. This is the area we're watching tomorrow. Primary threat would be some gusty winds. And again, you don't see that second or third tier, just kind of that first elevated level for gusty winds, and maybe some hail back out to the west. So we'll continue to watch for all of these things, but it doesn't look as bad as it looks today. Now, I mentioned with thunderstorms, sometimes we get some cold pools that develop. And with thunderstorms, when they come rolling through your area, you may notice the atmosphere cooling or chilling out. This is called a cold pool. Meteorologist Becca Birdsall over at our sister station in Charlotte explains.
When we think of pools, we usually picture something to cool off in. But the atmosphere has its own kind of pools. They don't involve a diving board or sunscreen. Let's dive into the cold pools of the atmosphere and raise your weather IQ. A cold pool is a bubble of chilly air created when rain falls out of a thunderstorm cloud. That cool air becomes heavier and plunges to the ground, spreading out along the surface fast. When it hits the surface, it creates powerful gusts of wind that toss around leaves, dust, and sometimes even debris. This rush of air is part of what we call an outflow boundary, like a mini cold front created by the storm itself. You can often spot this boundary on radar as a thin line racing ahead of the storm. Cold pools can either shut down a storm or spark new ones. If the cold pool settles directly underneath the storm cloud, it can block the rising warm, humid air that was fueling it. The storm loses its power source and fades out. But if the outflow boundary lifts warm, moist air nearby, it could trigger new storms along its edge. In some cases, this leads to training storms, where thunderstorms form over the same area again and again, like train cars on a track. That's a recipe for heavy rain and flash flooding. You can feel a cold pool before a storm even arrives. The sudden cool breeze, the swirling winds, and the eerie calm, that's your atmospheric heads up. From the Weather Impact Team, I'm meteorologist Becca Birdsall.
All right, Becca, appreciate that. You know, one of the things that we'll tell you a lot of times if you're out there and, you know, you see the skies getting a little darker and you can see maybe off in the distance, yeah, there's something out there, but you feel that rush of cooler air. That's that frontal boundary, that outflow boundary coming through your area with the gust front. And that, again, a heads up that, hey, there's some colder air somewhere. Maybe some rain is pulling down that colder air aloft with the thunderstorm. And in her piece, I don't know if you saw it, there were two outflow boundaries that came together. It's kind of like two waves crashing together, and they kind of crash and go up a little bit. That's essentially what's happening in the atmosphere. You get the colder air rushing together, forces some upward motion, and you get thunderstorms kind of developing along those crashing boundaries as well. Really cool stuff there. All right, we're going to turn our attention from atmospheric waves and fronts kind of crashing together to the tropics, where, you know, you get enough wave action around some of these systems that develop. Want to remind you, we are right here, July 28th, the end of July. We have so much of the hurricane season ahead of us. The peak of the season, September 10th in the Atlantic Basin. So a long way to go. Take a look at this right here. I was watching this earlier this morning. I said, you know, it looks a little sus. If you look closely, you can see a little bit of outflow here. I thought maybe the Hurricane Center might just say they were monitoring that. I'm sure they are watching little areas of convection. It's not well organized. It's just a cluster of little thunderstorms. And when you take a look at the forecast guidance and global models, it doesn't really do much. It just kind of does its thing, just some little pop-up showers and some areas of convection. But anytime I see what looks like a anticyclonic kind of outflow here in the northern hemisphere, this clockwise twisting of some of the clouds fanning out, it always catches my attention. So, you know, we'll keep an eye to that, even though the Hurricane Center right now is not too worried about it. Looking back across the Gulf, not much going there. The Caribbean also pretty quiet right now, as well as the rest of the Atlantic Basin. We've been watching some areas for possible development out here in the Eastern Pacific, but really not a lot going on. We do have Iona here across the central part of the Pacific, and this is hundreds and hundreds of miles to the south of the Hawaiian Islands. From Honolulu earlier this morning, this was a distance of about 900 miles. So you're looking at about 600 to 700 miles or so anyway as it's passing and then staying well to the south. So not too worried about that. There are, in the central part of the Pacific, a couple more waves that are also forecast to stay south of the islands as they move along. But there's a pretty good chance we could get some more development in this part of the Pacific. So we need to keep an eye to all of this, but right now, that's what we're looking at. You can see across the southeast U.S., there is a low risk of development, and eventually, while things are still quiet right here along the Mexican coastline in the eastern Pacific, there is a moderate threat of development here over the coming period here. You see between July 30th and August 5th. So this is a little bit longer range. There is some potential, but right now what's out there appears to be staying south of Hawaii. And as for the rest of the Atlantic Basin, we're still in good shape, although there is one wave coming off the African coast that has caught my attention. Not that the models do a lot with it, but there is a spin, a wave that comes off the African coast that tracks across the Atlantic Basin, across the main development region. So it'll be something to watch here over the coming week. All right, as we look at our local waters today, we have light north and northeast winds, about 5 to 10 knots. This is for the bay and for the ocean. The sea's only at 2 feet. The low tide this morning was around 6:25. The high tide this afternoon coming around 12:30. That's for Sewell's Point. As we turn our attention to the beaches, low threat of rip currents. And remember, last week we had moderate and high threats. Today it's low. UV index, though, very high. Got to remember the sunscreen. I know a lot of folks already have their tan or they've already freckled. They might think, I don't need to worry about it anymore. Still a good idea to put on that sunscreen and protect your skin. Surf height, only 2 feet. Water temperature right now around 80. It is in the low 80s for the Chesapeake Bay. I'm going to switch up the sky view. Let's take this full, and what I'm going to do is switch over to our beach cam because that one's showing the partly sunny skies, but I do want to take you out to the ocean front, and as we do that, what you're going to find there at the ocean front, the conditions pretty good across the area. Let's see. Switch that up on the fly. There you go. You can see the waves, again, only around 2 feet. So the sun is shining down there as we check out that beach forecast. It is a quiet start to the day. Now, it is going to be very warm out there. The beach, one of the places where people can actually beat the heat a little bit. Grass pollen is moderate today. Other than that, the other pollen is not an issue. All right, as we take a look at the satellite, the radar images, skies are mostly sunny to partly sunny. You see a few fair weather clouds, but no problems out there. Temperatures this morning, upper 70s to low 80s. It's feeling warmer than that because of the humidity. As we go through the afternoon, the temperatures will climb up pretty close to 90, 91 degrees officially. You'll notice a little cell popping up here into northeast North Carolina. Chances are not great that we see much, but I'm going to leave that 20% up. That 20% chance is we could see a couple of isolated cells here or there, mainly in North Carolina. I think most of the area looks really good as we head through the afternoon and into the evening. Skies mainly clear early tomorrow morning. Temperatures ranging from the low 70s to upper 70s across the area. And then as we go into the afternoon, again, upper 80s to low 90s. It's going to be another hot day tomorrow. Not quite as humid. So the feels like temperature tomorrow. Today we're 100 to 105. Tomorrow more like 97 or 98 to about 102. A little bit less oppressive tomorrow, but not much. Still really hot. As we look ahead to Wednesday, it's going to be another scorcher back up into the low to mid 90s, and our chances for rain pretty slim as we go through the day Wednesday. By Thursday afternoon and Friday, that's when we're more likely to see some scattered wet weather. Some of those showers and storms may be locally heavy, and then we're going to cool it down and dry it out for the upcoming weekend. So temperatures today around 89 in Virginia Beach, 91 in Chesapeake. Again, there could be a stray shower. Chances pretty low, and that's going to be down around the state line. You get down around Hickory, maybe St. Bride, some of those communities down south. Looking at Smithfield, Suffolk, Wakefield, and Franklin, low to mid 90s. Peninsula, low to mid 90s as well. 91 in Hampton, 93 at Newport News, and 95 in Williamsburg. Upper 80s to low 90s for the Middle Peninsula, and then mid to upper 80s along the eastern shore. At the Outer Banks, mid to upper 80s. We'll see low to mid 90s for northeast North Carolina with that chance for a stray shower or storm, mainly down to the south. Now, overnight tonight, the low temperature is going to drop to about 76. Skies mainly clear. There is a chance for an isolated storm or two down in North Carolina during the early evening, but generally we're looking at pretty good conditions. For tomorrow, temperatures back up around 92. A lot of sunshine. It's going to be hot, but hopefully just a little less humid. We'll see. All right, as we look ahead beyond that, temperatures up into the mid-90s on Wednesday. We'll see that high around 94, 92 on Thursday, some scattered wet weather there. And into Friday, more the same. But look at those temperatures coming down. 85 for a high on Friday, 81 Saturday and Sunday, and drier with more sunshine. Finally, a really comfortable weekend to look forward to. Can't wait for that. Do recommend keeping an eye on the radar, especially if you're down in North Carolina. So a great way to do that is by downloading the 13 News Now mobile app. If you don't already have it, you can scan the QR code right there on the screen. You'll have access to breaking news updates, traffic and weather. It's free and available wherever you download your apps, whether it's the App Store or Google Play. It's a great resource, and it's a great way to stay in touch with our forecast. I want to thank you again for joining us today here on the Weather Desk. I'm meteorologist Craig Moeller. Each and every weekday morning, right around 9 o'clock, we get you covered with today's top weather headlines. We'll see you next time.